What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Miami. This is season 7, episode 5, and I'm gonna just say this, Gertie, you didn't pass the vibe check with this group, and honestly, you might need to pull a Garcelle, or hopefully, if you stay on this show, as it persists, they give you a friend. Because it's getting tough out there. It's for you, ma'am. On top of that, Lisa, you were dead wrong. Like, dead wrong for what you did at the end of this episode. Okay? But let's get into it. So y'all know sometimes before we get into it, we get a little spicy, just a little bit. And I just have a few things I want to talk to you guys about. So first up, let's talk about Lisa. So Lisa came out to refute or to combat everybody saying that she was rude and tacky for showing up late. 2 hours late. Well, this is what she said on Twitter. She said, I actually told everyone I was running way behind with notice and to go without me so they wouldn't be delayed. I feel bad they chose to wait, but I did offer that clearly and I have the messages to prove it. Hashtag RHOM. I don't know how much I believe this because, girl, if you got the messages, post them. Don't tell me you have them. Post them, Lisa. What's the point of waiting until the reunion? Like, post them. She was also in the comments section on reality entertainment doing the same thing, trying to refute what people were saying. So the user said this: I would have left. Find your own way there and meet us. TUH. Lisa responded by saying, interestingly, I did offer that option to the group. It just wasn't seen. So I guess she's trying to say production, she sent that to production, but production didn't tell them. But I'm like, Marisol called you. That's why I don't really believe Lisa, because Marisol called you. You could have called her back or picked up the phone. If it was that important for you to let them know that you weren't going to be there, you would have made an effort. So whether she sent the information or not, she didn't care. That's plain and simple. So then another user says, Stephanie, trained by Larsa, definitely came in with preconceived notions and a target on Lisa's back. And then Lisa responded by saying 100. I also think this is a cop-out as well because, girl, whether you think Stephanie has preconceived notions or not, you were 2 hours late. Whether you told them to go ahead without you, you're still 2 hours late to somebody's event. That's disrespectful. It is, Lisa. And it's very interesting to see you not take responsibility of that. Like, you even got on the bus. You didn't say, oh, my bad, you guys. I'm sorry. I couldn't get my hair right. There was no excuse because you're used to inconveniencing other people. Because I'll say this, I've been known to be late, at least 10, 15 minutes, sometimes even an hour late. And the moment I know I'm going to be late, I'll be like, hey, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm running late. I try to let you know ahead of time. I'll even call my friends to let them know. But we saw people call you. You didn't call back. You sent them the voicemail. You just didn't care. Just own the fact that you didn't care. And if you really do have the messages to prove it, post them. So moving on, since we're talking about Stephanie was on Watch What Happens Live, and she was actually asked about Lisa. So if you guys remember, in one of my spicy corners or one of my The Drama videos, I talked about how Lisa did an interview and basically said that she feels like Stephanie is under Larsa's spell. So a viewer called in and basically asked, like, how does she feel about what Lisa said? So let me play that clip for you guys.
What is your reaction to hearing Lisa say in the press that you are under Lisa's spell?
Under Larsa's spell.
No, Larsa doesn't have a spell on me. We really bonded. I love Larsa so much. It's so fun hanging out with her and talking to her all the time. It's not a spell. Really, does anybody really think that Stephanie can be under the spell of anybody? Like, there's no way.
No, I don't think so.
Masood's spell, yeah.
Yes.
I agree with Stephanie. I don't think that Larsa has her under any type of spell. I think she actually likes Larsa and they get along. What I will say is, I think Lisa has to understand that to a certain degree, everybody on this cast is self centered and self absorbed. But she is one, if not the most, out of everybody that seems to center herself in everything. Then and if I had to put an order, I would say it's Lisa, then Alexia, then Larsa, and then you can feed in everybody else, like depending on the episode. But I think Lisa thinks she's so different from Larsa, and it's like, no, girl, you and her are basically the same person, but y'all are on different spectrums of like being self-absorbed, superficial, and just like all about yourself. And I just think Stephanie can tolerate Larsa's more than she can Lisa's. So moving on, let's talk about what Stephanie said about the situation between Gertie and what's her name? And Julia.
What did we make of Gertie and Julia's sit down tonight?
I just want to know why Gertie just wants to hold grudges. Like, just let it go. Just like forgive, forget, move on.
And
just, that's what I feel like.
what did you think?
I don't understand what they're fighting about. Can I just, am I missing something?
No,
like
it
the
did
Zoom?
seem very complicated.
Yeah.
More to come on that because you're going to find out more. But it did seem very complicated about the boat. And
It's not about the Zoom. It's never
No,
about the
it's
Zoom.
not about the Zoom.
It's like
Never.
really deep because even when I spoke to her, she was like digging deeper and deeper. I'm like, just drop it. Like let it go. Let's like
Right.
move on.
So I was disappointed in this comment from Stephanie. Like I told y'all last episode, I thought I was going to really like Stephanie, but that turned me off a little bit because I'm just like, girl, let's be honest. If you got that upset from Larsa moving your Birkin to the like counter, you definitely would have had a whole entire conniption fit from somebody throwing water on you. You would be telling your husband that you were going to prosecute that person to the fullest extent of the law. You would probably be trying to sue Bravo, like Britt Eady, for a hostile work environment. So please miss me with Gertie needing to get over it. But I will say I'm going to expound more on my thoughts about that in the review. But I was like, yes, Stephanie, you should have just maintained neutrality the same way Marisol and Kiki have been. Even though I didn't agree with both of them saying, like, well, Kiki said she feels like it's a lot of ego between Gertie and Julia and she just hopes that they can move on. Marisol said she felt like both of them were wrong and they ruined something special for her. But the fact that they still are saying Julia is wrong, even though they got backlash for their opinions, it wasn't that bad because they still acknowledge that Julia is wrong. Stephanie's getting it pretty tough right now because it seems like she's putting all the onus on Gertie to move forward when she's the one that got accosted. And I don't know why she didn't try to maintain neutrality like the rest of them, because it put a target on her back. So I saw people reference this Reddit thread on Twitter stating that it had a lot of tea about Stephanie. Well, shouts out to the YouTuber by the name of She's Speaking with Stephanie. She did a full on TikTok and Instagram video breaking down what was in the Reddit thread. And I'm going to play the video for you guys, but definitely check out her YouTube channel, her Instagram, and her TikTok. She goes by the same name, She's Speaking with Emily. But girl, it's not looking good for Stephanie and her husband. So let me play that for you guys.
I knew I didn't trust Stephanie, the new cast member of Real Housewives of Miami. Found this Reddit thread. Remember how Stephanie said the way she met Masood?
I met Masood at a Miami Heat game when I was 26 years old and he was 50.
She was actually Masood's ex-wife's assistant. That's how she met Masood. And then she had an affair with Masood and got her way into the company like that. Stephanie says she's been with her husband for 11 years, but he was officially divorced in 2019. Apparently, Stephanie legally changed her name to Masood's last name while he was still married. Stephanie and her husband are also being sued for $10 million that they allegedly owe a Miami real estate lender. His ex-wife and 2 daughters do not speak to him. Shoma Group was actually funded by his ex-wife's father. According to this Reddit post, what it appears like is Stephanie stole his ex-wife's life. Now, she wasn't really on my radar until she went on Watch What Happens Live, and this is how she answered this question about Gertie.
I just want to know why Gertie just wants to hold grudges. Like, just let it go.
So that caught my attention, and I said, let me look into this lady. And sure enough, she's not who she appears, which I think we all could figure out, right?
Girl, Stephanie, if this is true, because just because somebody posts it on Reddit doesn't mean that it's true. But if all of this is true, Miss Stephanie, girl, a mess. The fact that you said y'all were together for 11 years and he didn't divorce that lady until 2019. And it's like, girl, all of this is public record. Are you serious, Stephanie? And I did see a lot of comparisons the night of the episode where somebody was saying that Stephanie kind of reminds them of Bronwyn Newport from Salt Lake City, where it was like Bronwyn led with the fashions, led with this, led with that. And then all the while it's kind of coming out about the alleged money trouble and all the inconsistencies about her relationship with Father Todd. And now we basically have the same thing with Stephanie with this Reddit post. But I also saw people compare her to Mia Thornton. And at first I was like, no, I don't see that. But after this episode, I definitely see it, especially with the way that she is trying so hard to say that she's a boss and does this for the company. This is her baby. This is that. It is giving Mia Thornton-esque. It is. But I don't know why people get on these shows and act like people are not going to expose them. But that's all I got for y'all for the Spicy Corner. Let's get into this review. All right, y'all. So let's get into this episode. So it opens up and we see Alexia meeting up with this self-proclaimed like self-help expert, some guy by the name of Daniel. She found him on Instagram. They actually shared some of his posts, and honestly, the posts are very generic. One of them was a graphic that says even people with good hearts have limits. The other one was this one where he said, never try to defend yourself against a narcissist. They already know you're right. They just want you to go crazy trying to prove it. And so Alexia said she had saw a bunch of his posts and she was really feeling them. And she just was like, yeah, like it spoke to her, especially because it was coming from a male's perspective. We know that Alexia is male-centered. So it's not odd or like surprising to me that she would be into what this man is saying. But I guess where I'm like, girl, I wouldn't have an issue with you talking to this man or taking advice from him if he was a man that had letters behind his name. And what I mean like that by that is like if he was a psychologist, an actual therapist, a counselor, an actual life coach, like they didn't put no MS, they didn't put no BA, they definitely put no PhD. Like it's just like, or no DR. Like I'm like, girl, he's just spouting off what everyone says online when it comes to calling somebody a narcissist that does you dirty. And to be honest, I hate that everyone calls every person's actions, especially when women are dealing with men, narcissists, because I'm like, not everybody is a narcissist, y'all. And I feel like y'all dilute the meaning when you're constantly calling someone just being a downright asshole a narcissist. Because I think people forget that narcissists are being labeled that is somebody with a personality disorder. Like you have to be like evaluated. And now, and we do know that the American health system sucks ass and some people can't get evaluated, but I was just like, not everybody is a narcissist, y'all. Not every man you deal with is that. Some of them are just dicks. Just like, so she ends up talking to him. And this was the other reason why I was like, Alexia, I can't respect this man being your life coach, is because when she asked him, like, I don't understand why we keep running to these people when we see the red flags. And then all he could say to her is like, when you see a red flag and you ignore it, by the time you get to the 10th red flag, you have betrayed yourself. That's common, but she's asking you to help her understand why she sees these red flags with Todd and yet she keeps running back to him. And I'm like, if she was going to a therapist, an actual counselor, or even a licensed life coach, maybe they could talk you through it. But Alexia went to somebody that she thought was good looking, which is Daniel. And because he's attractive, she jumped on them. And I know he was happy because he promoted that he has 3 books and that, he was pitching himself. And I can't hate on him doing that, because if I got the opportunity to be on that platform, I would do the same if I had all of that stuff behind me. But it's just, it lessens the credibility of his work, if you ask me. So Alexia says they're going to have a narcissistic party, but the theme is going to be like Greeks and goddesses and Romans. And I said, girl, wait, because that doesn't even go. And then she was like, well, it all started there. And I was like, no, civilization was already a thing before the Greeks and the Romans. So there's that. So the next thing we move on to is Jody and Lisa. And I know a lot of people think Larsa is a gutter snipe, and she is, but she not lying about Jody being too intertwined and low-key controlling when it comes to Lisa. This scene to me proved it. So we see that everybody's getting ready for the hurricane season. They're supposed to have a storm, and she's talking about her big windows, and the windows in the bedroom are really big, so I would be worried about those breaking during a storm as well. But she basically says that, we have to make sure everything's okay. So Jody and her in her bedroom, she sits down, he sits down on the couch and she sits down on the bed, and he ends up asking her what's going on with the house, and she's like, I don't know. If y'all remember last year when they were in Mexico, Lisa let it be known that in her MSA, her marital settlement agreement with Lenny, that he is supposed to be building Lisa and the children their own house. Like, he got a plot of land. I think there was a house on there already, but it's supposed to be torn down. And then we saw the plans for the house that he was supposed to build last season. Well, ain't no headway been made on it. And I knew that was going to happen. And I think I made mention about that in my review, where I was like, if I was Lisa, I wouldn't have agreed to that, because he already showing you that he's not a stand-up person and that he was probably going to drag his feet. She should have found a house and just did renovations on it and made him pay for those, because at least she would have been in a house, not waiting for this man to build a house for her and the children. So things continue on in this conversation, and Lisa is talking about it in her confessional, where she's just like, she don't really know what's going on with her agreement. And so she starts to speak on it, but I guess she misspeaks, and Jody is in the confessional. We don't see him. You just hear him say, whoa, 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 like she said something wrong. So then she ends up being like, well, Jody knows more about this than I do. And I said, Lisa, why is that? Then we see her sitting on the bed, and she's like, people are just mad that I found my voice and that you're helping me because you're a stand-up guy, and anyone that has a problem with it, they can go F themselves. She ends up being like, because you're just always helping me. And when I tell you, I was so frustrated with this scene, because Lisa is 42 years old with 2 kids. Girl, did being with Lenny not teach you anything? The way that he has been dragging his feet and fighting you tooth and nail to ruin your reputation in the press, to belittle you because he turned you in for a newer model. He doesn't seem like he really wants to be in his children's lives. He doesn't really want to help you take care of them or pay child support or give you alimony. And it's like, you don't have anything, Lisa. So to go from that and then repeat the same behavior with with Joey is beyond me. Why are you CCing him on all of your business unless it's a business that you're starting with him? But it seems like you're CCing him on things that have nothing to do with him. Why does he know way more about your marital agreement and with your divorce settlement than you do? Why don't you know what's going on? Why, and it starts from childhood, knowing that Lisa left her house when she was 15 or 14 years old. And ever since then, there's been a man taking care of her. The first time she told us, it was her boyfriend's family that she moved in with that took care of her. Then when she went to Vegas, she was dating somebody. Then she met Lenny, and then Lenny's been taking care of her. There's not been one time we have seen Lisa really take care of herself. And it's frustrating because it's like, girl, you're too old for this. It's the same thing with Portia. The thing I can give Portia is that even though Portia gave up her jobs, which I think was stupid as I don't know what, she at least still held on to Pampered by Portia and Go Naked Hair. That is something that is hers. Lisa, to me, doesn't have anything that is hers. And I know I've seen people bring up brand deals, but it's like, those are brand deals for other brands. That's not Lisa's stuff. the brand deals can always fall through. But I was just like, yeah, as much as Larsa get on people's nerves, she clocked this. Like, that man definitely gives that he is too intertwined in your life and he's an opportunist. And if Jody and Lisa get married, the same thing that happened to Lisa with Lenny is going to happen with Jody. Because y'all act like men don't be switching up. So the episode continues and we get this scene of Stephanie, Larsa, and Kiki. So we end up seeing Stephanie at this place called Shoma Bazaar. It's a restaurant. Stephanie talks about how like she loves this place. This is her baby. We see her walking around the restaurant with a guy by the name of JC. And he is the manager of the restaurant. Now, I'm going to be honest. Like I said in the Spicy Corner, I've seen a lot of people make comparisons about Stephanie as it pertains to her being similar to Bronwyn's introduction as well as Mia Thornton's introduction, but I didn't see the Mia Thornton. I kind of saw the Bronwyn with the way she kind of leads with her money and the fashion, but the way that Stephanie speaks about how she's such this boss and her husband are this power couple and how this place, you know, Shoma Bazaar is like her baby. It is kind of giving like, girl, you are trying to act like you're more involved in the business than what you are. And like, it's starting to give that like, girl, you don't really be doing nothing. Because even like the receptionist that was at the door kind of looked at her like, hey girl, hey. And even when it came to when they went to the apartments, the receptionist was kind of looking at her. And then when they were doing the, well, I'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, I see the Mia Thornton comparisons and the I see where people are coming from with Mia and Bronwyn comparisons. So she talks about how her husband has been doing real estate since the 80s, you know, even before she was born. And then we end up seeing Larsa and Kiki get there. So they sit down, and while they're sitting down, next thing you know, there's a phone call, and it is Stephanie's mom, and she's like, hey mom, and then she shows the phone, it's her on FaceTime to Larsa, and then they show to Kiki. Some people were offended by the fact that the mom was like, oh my gosh, you speak Spanish, because Kiki responded to her in Spanish, and I didn't read that much into it. I'm like, maybe she just didn't assume she spoke Spanish. I know for me, I'm still trying to learn Spanish. So if I was someone that spoke Spanish fluently, I wouldn't automatically assume that everybody knows Spanish, because America doesn't force people to learn a second language. Like, it's an option in high school. Whereas in other countries, they start learning a different language, like well into like elementary. So I didn't take it as such. I was just like, you know, some people are just really excited and, surprised when people who they don't believe are Spanish speak Spanish. My sister's best friend is fluent in Spanish. I think she got like a master's degree in Spanish. So like, it comes off the cuff for her, but people are always surprised because she is black that like she speaks Spanish, and the people that she speaks Spanish to are always like so excited to have a conversation with her. So I was just like, yeah, I didn't think the lady was being disrespectful to her, but I know people are kind of on edge with the way that people see Gertie being treated. So I think some people are just kind of like sensitive to certain things. But yeah, I didn't think the lady was just being rude for no reason, you know? So they're sitting there, and Stephanie ends up saying that she talks to her parents every day. She also expressed how she took them on her honeymoon. And I said, girl, that tells me everything I need to know about how you feel about your husband. Because what do you mean you took them on the honeymoon? Because I was with Larsa, where she was like, your husband, you go on your honeymoon with your husband, you're supposed to be like swinging from the chandeliers. Like, girl, how do you swing from the chandeliers and then go back to your parents? That's weird. And so Kiki starts talking about her family and about how her dad and her met up, and she was like, I found out that I have a little brother. She was like, I want my dad to have a relationship with my son because, you know, he didn't even know that he was going to college, and my son is about to turn 19, and she was like, I'm trying to like bridge that gap. Larsa basically says, well, you can't like keep harboring on the negative things that your father did, especially if you want Shamar, which is Kiki's son, to have a relationship with him, because he's going to build a wall. Then Stephanie was like, well, you know, time is like running out, and that's crazy for me to say when I don't even talk to my twin sisters, but she was just like, time is literally slipping away, and you kind of just want to make amends now before you don't have that time anymore. So we get slightly a backstory about Stephanie's relationship with her sisters, where she basically says that, you know, I made the fatal mistake of letting them work at the Shoma group. She says sometimes they felt like I was talking down to them, or that I thought I was better than them. She was like, I'm the type of person that always wants to like help people. So she was like, I gave them cars, I did this. And she was like, my sister was like, do you think you're better than us? And I'm like, well, why are you taking it there? But then I'm like, also, Stephanie, your behavior I won't even say behavior because we haven't seen you be the worst, but it definitely kind of give nice nasty at times. But then Stephanie attributes that to, like, when I go on these sites and it's 85 men, I have to be direct. I have to demand respect. And that is true, but you have to know when to turn it off. But I do want to know more information about this situation. Like, is it going to be like a Brit Edie situation where it's like, yeah, you allowed your family to be a part of your company, but you don't know how to talk to people? Like, is Stephanie going to be a Brit Edie where it's like, girl, you worked with your family, but you didn't know how to communicate with them and you were very disrespectful? Could that be the case? So she was just like, yeah, we're still working on that. So then they talk about the baby shower. And Stephanie ends up saying that she had a good time at the baby shower, but she knows who's going to be her friend for her and who's not. And they bring up Lisa. And they bring up Lisa saying, like, well, I want to be friends with you because you have a boat and a plane. And it was in poor taste. Like, granted, we know that's probably how most people operate. Currently, I'm looking for boat friends. I want to be out on the lake with a couple of people, drinking a margarita and just having a good time. But, like, you should not be seeking out people solely for the things that they have. That gives user vibes. But I also feel like Lisa was drunk and she was uncomfortable and she just said what she thought. And she might have thought it was funny, but it came off cringy because even Kiki was like, I even was like, yeah, girl, do you not hear what you're saying? So then Larsa is like, yeah, that's Lisa, she's very superficial. And I said, girl, that is rich coming from you, Larsa, because y'all are the same person. You are superficial as hell, girl. So what are you talking about? But Kiki basically says, when are you two going to have a conversation? And Larsa is just like, well, we do need to have a conversation because what we've been arguing about it since the summer. So yeah, I need to have a conversation with her. But she was just like, I just don't know how to gauge Lisa at this point. So next we have this scene of Alexia gaslighting Gertie. So we find out that the reason why Gertie didn't go to Julia's baby shower is because she was in New York. She was actually being honored and got the opportunity to ring the bell down at Wall Street for breast cancer awareness. We also find out that the storm that everybody was preparing for didn't do anything. It seems like it was just like very high winds or something like that, but everybody's okay. We see Alexia and Gertie sit down to have a conversation, and Alexia ends up asking her how New York was. Gertie says it was great. Then she ends up asking Gertie, how is your relationship with the women? And Gertie basically says she feels some weird energy going on with the group. Basically, she posted the pictures that they showed us in the group chat, and nobody like congratulated her, liked the photos. Everyone just kind of bypassed it. And she's like, I get it that everyone was talking about the baby shower, but the fact that nobody was talking about like my pictures or even saying like congratulations, Gertie, or anything, that was weird. And Alexia tries to tell Gertie that, I may have not seen it. Maybe I bypassed it. But, if you showed me, I'll let you know what I was thinking in that moment. Then she goes on to say that maybe it's just in your head. And I said, girl, what? No, it's not. It's not in her head. So then Alexia and her start talking back and forth about why Gertie feels like the group is acting differently towards her. And they bring up Julia and the situation that happened at Marisol's party. Now, mind you, they show us a scene that we didn't see the night of the party. And basically, it seemed like everybody at the table was kind of chastising her, except for Kiki. So you end up seeing Larsa speak on Julia's behalf, where she was like, well, Julia just doesn't like the lies, Gertie. I think she feels like you're lying. So then Gertie ends up telling Larsa, girl, I'm giving you too much grace. Like, don't even speak to me. Like, you're not the jury and the judge or the executioner about this situation. Larsa responds by saying, no, Gertie, I'm not that. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's how Julia feels. Then Alexia ends up saying that, like, Gertie, you're coming off like very defensive and like very loud right about now. And then Marisol chimes in and she ends up saying, Gertie, I don't like when people are getting piled up on or gang up on, and it kind of feels this way. So maybe you should just stop speaking because I don't want you to feel that way. So it does seem like Gertie is pretty much like out here by herself. The conversation continues with Alexia, where they start talking about her and Julia. And Gertie is like, I don't understand what Julia wants from me or what I did to make her do what she did. She was like, the stuff that she said about the cruise and everything, that was not true. So then Larsa says, I just think that you guys need to have a conversation and a sit down to hash out your feelings. And she was just like, maybe it's just like y'all's personalities and things of that nature. Then Gertie is like, everybody's personality in this group is up and down. Like, we all have our good days and our bad days. Like, just because of that situation doesn't mean that, like, I'm totally in the wrong. Like, and what Julia did was okay. So then Gertie basically is just like, I don't, like, kind of just Alexia, like, girl, are you trying to say that this is like my fault? Then in the confessional, Alexia just says, like, Gertie is doing a lot of the things that people that they find annoying or they don't like about her, which is getting hella defensive and talking over people. And the thing about it is, they have been talking about Gertie's behavior since season 4. When the Julia situation happened, where Julia shared that her son was murdered, and Gertie tried to relate by talking about her miscarriage, Adriana talked about how, like, she felt like Gertie was trying to make it about herself. That was season 4. Then season 5 is when they filmed the Fuego video for Adriana's music, and Alexia and Gertie got into it because Gertie ends up saying that Alexia basically always is talking over her, and Alexia's like, no, you talk over me. Then they talk about how they weren't seeing eye to eye with one another, and then we get to season 6. Season 6 changed because we found out that Gertie had cancer. So a lot of the women started to rally behind her. The only person that she was really at odds with was Larsa, and then she had a moment with Lisa at one point. But it's just kind of like they've always had issues with Gertie's behavior, and I just think it's because her personality just doesn't pass the vibe check. Yes, all these women to a certain extent are self-centered and obnoxious and self-absorbed, but it's palatable for the rest of them. Gertie's personality is not. And that's why when people were trying to say that, Kiki pulled a Sutton on Gertie when she left the party, no, Kiki pulled a Garcelle on Gertie. Kiki was just like, I'm not staying here. They don't want us here. And she said that in French, and Gertie decided to stay. Kiki was like, I'm going home. I'm wet. Their people are being disrespectful. I'm going home. Gertie should have got up and left. Or if anything, if she was going to stay, instead of continuing talking about what Julia did to her, she should have broke down and cried. Like, she should have just been like, I'm mortified, and just started crying and making a big deal about that lady throwing that drink on her. Because I was on the Whether You Like It or Not panel, the Miami edition. I posted the link to the panel review on my community tab. But I said if I was Gertie, I would have left, or I at least would have put hands on Julia, but I would have made a scene. Like, I would have out Karen the Karen. That's why that situation with Uba and Bryn went the way that it did, is because Uba out Karen Bryn. Nobody expected Uba to scream the way she did, or to get viscerally, like, angry and start to get sick by what Bryn insinuated that she did. It made Bryn look horrible. And what Bryn wanted was for Uba to look bad, but it turned around on Bryn. And if Gertie really wanted that to happen, she should have pulled an Uba. She should have broke down. The issue is with this group is that they like Gertie, they just don't want to be friends with her. Because a lot of them have said in their interviews that, no, I like Gertie, but I'm closer to Julia. They've become friends with Julia. They're not really friends with Gertie. And as somebody who has been in a position like Gertie, where people don't like my personality, or they just don't really want to be friends with me, I had to learn how to start approaching situations as like, okay, we're just associates. We're just co-workers. They view Gertie as a co-worker, not a friend. And I want her to get it into her mind, especially if she stays on this show, deal with these people as co-workers. Like, don't talk in that group chat unless it has anything to pertains to the show. Like, don't share like special moments with them in that group chat. Share it with the friends that you actually have cultivated beyond this show. And I honestly feel like Nicole was the yin to Gertie's yang. The same way that Russell is very like monotone and kind of like deadpan, Nicole was very balanced in the sense that that's why they got along to a certain degree. And I feel like Nicole was Gertie's buffer, and she's no longer there. So now Gertie has to fend for herself. And I don't know if she's going to do well on her own. But I feel like if she's going to stay on this show, production needs to hire her a friend, or Gertie needs to move accordingly. Because them girls are letting you know you ain't passed the vibe check. The same way they let Sutton know all the time that she didn't pass the vibe check. Because the girls liked Garcelle. They just didn't like the way that she was so loyal to Sutton. If Garcelle would have distanced herself from Sutton and became friends with the rest of the ladies, it'd be Sutton leaving that show, not Garcelle. So the next scene we get is of Kiki with her son and his friend Nervy. And they're going to this what's it called, mini golf place, but it's like indoors. We find out that Larsa is going to be joining them. I thought it was a very cute scene. The boy ends up saying that, like, I joined like 6 clubs in college, but I'm getting hazed. And Kiki was like, what does that word mean? And then her the friend was like, he getting bullied. And Kiki was like, oh my gosh, Shamar, are you getting bullied? And he was like, I'm playing. And Kiki was like, don't play with me like that. And I was like, yeah, why would you play with your mom like that? Because we find out that Shamar is the first one in their family to go to college. So Kiki is extremely proud of him. She gets emotional in the confessional, being like, I worry every day. Like, is he eating enough? Does he know how to clean his room correctly? Is he washing his clothes? She was like, I even offered to like get him a maid. He tells me no. She was just like, I'm proud of him, but I'm also worried about him. And I thought it was cute. We then see Larsa pull up. I was like, Larsa, why you got on a crop top? A croopity crop. Now, granted, her son is 18 years old, but girl, you could have put on a t-shirt. So they sit down and Larsa ends up asking Shamar, like, what's your major? He says it's psychology, but he's thinking about changing it to sociology. She asks, does he have a girlfriend? His friend immediately said no. And I said, oh. Now, some people were trying to say that they felt like maybe Shamar and the friend like have a relationship. I don't know. To me, I just felt like his friend was clowning him to immediately be like, no, he don't. But I mean, if he is, I don't care. So they end up playing mini golf, having a good time. While they're playing, Larsa and Kiki have a conversation where Kiki is like, I want my dad to make sure that he reaches out to Shamar. Like, his birthday is tomorrow. He's turning 19. And I want them to bridge the gap to their relationship. And Larsa's just like, well, you got to call him. And Kiki's like, I don't know about that, girl. Because in their community, like, you're supposed to call your elders. Like, it's up to you to make the first move. But honestly, her dad should be making the first move. And she's just like, well, I want him to have a relationship with him. So maybe. So we actually see them go to the bar where she calls her dad and she basically tells her father, I need you to make sure you call Shamar. And the dad is very receptive and he says, okay, I'll do it. And Kiki is actually kind of surprised because she didn't expect her dad to be so receptive. I don't know. When it comes to Kiki and this situation with her dad, it is annoying to see how Lisa, Stephanie, and Larsa are very much like, oh, my parents can do no wrong. Like, they're your parents. And it's like, yeah, they're your parents. It doesn't matter. Like, the level of maturity, you should be more mature than me when you're my parent. It shouldn't be the other way around. And I get that Kiki wants her son to have a relationship with her father, but I hope she's being realistic to the point that to know that her father probably will more than likely drop the ball as time goes on. Because he definitely gives deadbeat daddy and wayward dick. Like, it's given Papa was a Rolling Stone when it comes to her father. Stephanie and the Mia Thornton and the Bronwyn comparisons. I get where y'all are coming from. I do. Because it is kind of like Stephanie is putting on a little bit too much. Because if you are this boss, bitch that you say you are, then certain things you would be saying would make sense to me. And even with this whole stage scene with them dogs, that didn't make sense why that needed to be in there either. Like, it feels like y'all are trying to soften up Moosin's appearance to the public, and it's not giving that. So they walk into the village or the Shoma village. We see her talking to the receptionist. She ends up asking the receptionist, what kind of meetings do I have today? Who's coming? And mind you, I'm like, girl, if you were that person, then you would have already known the meetings that you have for that day. If you're supposed to be so type A personality, to me, the question you'd be asking this receptionist, did anybody cancel? Like, yes or no. And the girl would be like, no, and y'all would move on. We then see the realtor come out. The realtor was kind of surprised by them being there too. And she was like, oh, hey, what's up? And she was like, so what happened during the storm? Did anything happen during the storm? The realtor telling the story about someone dropping off 2 dogs. She ends up saying that they took them to the vet. And basically, the vet said that they were fine. They're up in one of the apartment rooms. And her husband ended up saying that, like, it's in one of the rooms with no furniture, right? And the lady was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I told him to put them in a room with no furniture. So Stephanie is kind of like, okay. So we actually see them with one of the other realtors, and they're walking around one of the apartments. They're looking at one of the staged apartments. Stephanie is like, I have to do my check. Give me 5 minutes to run my check. She's opening up the toilets, doing all. And I said, okay, Stephanie, like, if no one's been in this room, what are you checking for? And so you then see her husband telling the realtor, do not take her to the other room. Do not do it. Like, waving his finger in that lady's face, which I was like, okay, sir. And she's like, oh, okay. And so she was like, take me to the other one, to the other showroom. And they were like, no, we don't need to go. It's fine. And then Stephanie's like, you about to piss me off. Are the dogs in there? And he's like, don't worry about it. So they take them to the other stage department, and there's 2 dogs, and they already named the dogs Milton and I think it's Milton. Was it Helena? I think it was Milton and Helena. I'm not sure. But they named them after the hurricanes that have passed through Miami. And the dogs were well groomed. One of them pooped on the bed. The other one pissed on like the bed and on the pillows. And I was like, this is giving very much staged. And the dogs are very like, for them to be like dropped off and discarded, they don't seem afraid, they don't seem scared. And the fact that they already had bandanas around their necks, I'm like, it's giving y'all took them groomed, like you got them groomed. You groomed them, you checked it, like this just didn't make sense. Like this was a scene that was not needed because it felt very much fake. Like I feel like if someone discarded dogs, either the dogs would be afraid, but they were running up on Stephanie. And I was like, are these y'all's dogs? Like, I know we saw the other dogs, but are you a family of 4? Or, like, because she ends up talking about how, her husband has such this forgiving heart when they go to St. Bart's. He goes to the bakeries and, like, crumbles muffins around town for the turtles. And I'm like, do you know if that's good for the turtles? Side note, stop feeding ducks, swan, geese, bread. Do not feed them bread, okay? You can feed them like peas, frozen peas, and other I'll put a graphic on here. Y'all be feeding them bread, causing them animals harm. Like, I remember I used to go down with, like, my parents, and we would feed the ducks white bread, but the bread actually, like, causes impactments in their intestines. The animals be dying from constipation. Or, like, I think it's, like, what is it called? Is it enteritis? Basically where, like, intestines get inflamed. So yeah, if you gonna take your kids to go feed the ducks or the geese or is it ducks or swan, definitely go Google what you can feed them. And normally I think it's like frozen peas. You can feed them certain vegetables. Like, yeah, stop feeding them animals bread. So her saying like, oh, he leaves like muffins around the islands for the turtles. I'm like, are you killing turtles? Because I feel like you might be killing the turtles. So then we get this scene of Stephanie and her husband talking about her sisters, saying that her sisters reached out to her mom and her, trying to check up on them to make sure that they're okay, because it seems like the sisters are also estranged from the parents. And they were saying like, oh, we're worried about y'all. How's the hurricane? Is everybody okay? And Stephanie was like, she was appreciative to them for reaching out to her. And she messaged them back. And she was basically like, how are you guys doing? How's work? How's this? What's going on with y'all? And it was radio silence after that. I could also tell that this scene was staged as well, because when she brought up like, hey, I got in contact with my sisters, he was like, husband seemed like confused by her saying that. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I love your sisters. Like, it was weird. It was a weird exchange. She also talks about how her husband is so much more youthful than her, and he doesn't give that he's in his 60s, because Stephanie is like 40. I think she's like 41 or 40, and she says her husband is 26 years older than her. So that means that man is like 66 or 65 at the time when they was filming this. He still give old to me. So we get to sit down with Gertie and Julia, and I was irritated. First off, what did Gertie have on? Gertie is beautiful to me, but she is in the category like Garcelle, Shamia, and Giselle. Pretty, but can't dress worth a damn. And it's sad because I was like, Gertie, are you going to a gothic pool party? Like, where were you going? You're going to like, okay. So she walks in, and at first she's like, do I meet like the dress code? Because the guy basically said that in order to get into the restaurant, I think it was like you can't have on like swimwear. So Gertie gets there, they sit down, and she's like, hi, Julia's like, hi, thank you for coming. And Gertie's like, hi. So they sit down, and she's like, Gertie says, thank you for the invitation. And I said, first of all, girl, I wouldn't have thanked that lady for nothing. I'd have been like, so why are we here? Are there things you need to say to me? Are there? So they sit down with each other, and she was like, I read your text message that you sent me the day after what happened. And then Julia was like, I really meant it. And we actually see the flashback where they talked about this last episode, but Julia rereads the text message, and she's reading it in front of Alexia and Marisol. And she was like, it really came from like an open place. Like, I really wrote that from my heart. And the thing is like, while they're talking, Julia is looking down most of the time, but every now and again she glares at Gertie. Like, she just stares at her like this, waiting for Gertie to say something. So like, after she says what she said about like, I wrote that from a heartfelt place, I guess she was expecting Gertie to say something, but Gertie didn't say anything. She was just like, okay. And so then Julia was like, well, what happened with the water? I'm sorry. That's not me. Emotions just got the best of me. And I said, okay, because you was drunk. Is that why? So then Gertie ends up saying, I was literally and completely like blindsided and backstabbed. Like, I couldn't believe that you did that. So then Julia tries to combat that by saying, well, Gertie, what about like you sharing that I have a facelift? Like, I didn't tell anybody that. And, that was so harsh to me. And I'm like, she only shared that after you threw a drink on her. Because when they show the flashbacks, you can tell what's going on based off of Gertie not being wet. Like, when she got the water thrown on her, where her breast is, where the dress is covering, is wet. When they showed the flashback of when all the ladies were telling Gertie, like, kind of chastising her, she was dry. So I was like, she said that after you threw a drink after her that you got a facelift. And Gertie even said, well, you hurt me, so I was hurting you back, as you should. You don't get to throw something on me and I don't get to cuss you out or hurt your feelings. So the conversation continues with Julia being like, Gertie, like, what kind of friend throws that information out there, that private information? Are you not remorseful? And Gertie was just like, well, I was trying to like explain myself and say why I said those things. Like, I only brought up the Martina situation because of what you did. So when Julia said that, I was like, oh, so you're only apologizing because you're tired of feeling like a shitty person. Like, it's not because you genuinely feel like what you did to her was wrong. It's because you feel like crap and you thought the women were going to rally behind you, but they didn't. I know a lot of people are like, well, the women didn't rally behind Gertie, but they did in a sense. Marisol and Larsa both said that they did not like the fact that Julia threw a drink on Gertie. You also saw Larsa tell Julia she was wrong for what she just did. And even Alexia was like, yeah, that was a bit too much. So the women are like, yeah, she was wrong, but they're still friends with Julia, y'all. They're not friends with Gertie. But I think Julia in her mind thought the girls were going to rally behind her, and they didn't. They basically looked at her like she was crazy because they were like, why would you do that? So then as Gertie is trying to explain herself and why she felt the way that she felt, because she goes on to say that what really hurt her, I guess beyond the whole water situation, is the fact that Julia said that Gertie and her are not friends. You end up hearing her saying, we're not friends, Gertie. And then Gertie said, I never said we were friends, okay? I just said we used to be friends. So Gertie's feelings were hurt. So she felt embarrassed. And honestly, that's the quickest way to get me never to like be around you ever again. Embarrassing me is the quickest way for me to never rock with you again, because I hate the feeling of embarrassment. I hate feeling embarrassed. And I was just like, yeah, Gertie, ugh, no, you better than me, because I wouldn't have even sat down with her. She would have to wait until like the middle of the season or even at the reunion for me to really give her the time of day. I would just go to these like sit downs with the cast and just not speak to her the whole. I would act like she doesn't exist. I would. Like, no, ma'am. So as Gertie is talking, Julia ends up being like, Gertie, do you like me? And it was very creepy. Very creepy. Like, and Gertie was like, I like, let me get my thoughts out so I don't get pissed off at you. Because Gertie was still trying to explain how angry she was with Julia. And then she ends up saying, of course I like you, because I wouldn't be here sitting down with you if we weren't having this conversation. So then Gertie ends up saying, that's why it bothers me that you did what you did, because I'm sitting here being like, girl, it's me. It's Gertie. Like, you're like, I couldn't believe that you were treating me this way. And she said, after a while, I just was like, you know what? If we fighting, we fighting. So, you know, I felt like all these daggers and things were coming at me. So I just was throwing them back at you. So Julia tries to say, well, you know, sometimes when you're in a relationship with someone and you love them, you have to go through the worst of it or something like that. So Gertie is just looking at her like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And then Julia, again, is glaring at Gertie. And she basically says, if the group asks me, like, where we are in our friendship, I will just say that's between me and you. I will not expound upon it. I'll just say this is what we have going on with each other. Julia says in her confessional that honestly, what's done is done with me and Gertie, and the only thing that we could do is move forward. Gertie ends up saying, okay, I'll take it as such, but she basically says in her confessional that her and Julia are going to have to take like mouse steps. Like, we're like, it's never going to be the same again. Like, that's the only thing that's going to happen between us. And I just feel like, girl, there would be no steps. There would be no steps. And I was disappointed because I wanted Gertie to be mad. Because I feel like when Kiki and Julia got into it, Kiki was mad at Julia. And it didn't take, like, Julia had to really apologize to Kiki for Kiki to get over, like, their situation. And I wish Gertie would have been the same. I wish Gertie would have cussed Julia out. Because, like someone said on like, Twitter, no, it was on Instagram, Julia would have had to run me one. I'd have been like, someone said I'd have been like Dorito on Mob Wise when her and Karen had that sit down where Three threw her purse on the table, said, get up, Karen, and with the whopping, that person said, that would have been me. And I said, yeah, Julia would have had to, like, she would have had to grovel. Like, you would have had to beg me to forgive you. Like, because it would not have been that easy. It wouldn't have. And I just feel like Gertie wants to be liked by this group, but, like, girl, like I said, you don't pass the vibe check, so they don't see it for you, unfortunately. So we then see it's time for Alexia's narcissistic party. We actually see her and Daniel walking around the event space, and it's actually nice. It's kind of like it's garden theme. They have the different statues everywhere. Alexia feels like Daniel is more qualified than the shamans that they saw, I think, season 5 when they were down. I don't know. I don't think they were in Mexico. I think they were in another island area. But you see when they were doing like the screaming at the beach, and then when they had the shaman, like, you know, cleansing them, I was like, I would take the shaman over I would take the shaman over you know, a man that uses Chat GPT in order to give us cute little, like, quotable Instagram and Twitter thoughts. Like, what are we doing? So the place is really nice. They have like a gondola and they have swans, and so Alexia is like eating it up. He has some saying on a mirror, and she's just like, you know, I'm ready for the ladies to come. So we find out that she left a sprinter for all of them, and Marisol is the first one to get on the sprinter at 12 p.m. So they all have like different names that they are being labeled. Let me find out. So Alexia is the goddess of the stars. Gertie is the goddess of Gab. Adriana is goddess of purity. Julia is goddess of kissing. Stephanie is goddess of punctuality. What's her name? Kiki is goddess of male anatomy. Larsa is goddess of selfies. And then Marisol is goddess of cockies. So the women get there. We all see everyone file in because it goes Marisol, Larsa, then I think it was Kiki, then Gertie, then Julia, then Stephanie, or Stephanie was before Julia. Then we end up seeing Adriana get there last, and she gets there at 12:30. So they're all sitting around, eating, drinking, like the things that Alexia left in the sprinter. So they left, like, she had like the wreaths, the that you like crowns that people put on. She also had like alcohol and like a charcuterie board. So they're eating, and everyone's like, dang, like, where is Where is Lisa? We then also hear Stephanie said that like her two pet peeves is like people being late and people are constantly talking about penises. And Kiki said, girl, you in the wrong group. And then they do a montage of them talking about penises and vibrators. And I said, yeah, girl, you are in the wrong group. This is the wrong group for you. And so as time goes on, everyone's getting more and more irritated because they're like, where is Lisa? The girls have been there for a while because they've been getting on and off this sprinter. I think some people went to go to the bathroom, something, but they're all like, where is Lisa? We actually see Marisol call Lisa, and Gertie was like, make sure she tells you her ETA, because whatever she tells you, we need to add 20 minutes to it because she knows she late. She knows she late. And you could tell that everyone was getting annoyed because everyone was like, girl. And mind you, time is passing very quickly because like I said, Adriana got there last at 12:30 and they were supposed to be gone. Lisa's not there. And as much as Lisa wants to say online that she told them to go ahead of time, either way, girl, where's the receipt? Because it's given disrespectful. Because Marisol calls Lisa. Lisa doesn't pick up. She forwards them to voicemail. If it was really that serious for them to go ahead without you, or you wanted to make sure that you weren't being inconsiderate, you would have called her back and say, hey, I'm running late, please go ahead. But it's a pattern with Lisa. Marisol keeps talking about how like Lisa's been doing this since 2011. In my opinion, it's both the women's fault and Lisa's fault, because y'all have created an environment where Lisa thinks it's okay to disrespect people's time like that. Like since 2011, Lisa has been late like this, and we know Lisa has been late. She was late to the first reunion when they showed us that flashback. She was late when the girls were on, Nicole was around and her husband, well not her husband, her fiance was gonna fly them somewhere, and Nicole was like, girl, she taking longer than the flight to get here. And everyone was like, yeah. Then they also talked about her being late to, I think Marisol's, I think it was like her brand event that she had last season. And you hear Adriana being like, damn girl, finally. So it's not even like Lisa, this being like your first offense. Like if it was something serious, like maybe something happened with her kids, or she had a wardrobe malfunction, or like her hair was like something. But the fact that she got on that sprinter and she didn't even like apologize and be like, dang, my bad, y'all, I didn't mean to be this late, lets me know that you are constantly doing this and you just don't care. You don't care. So Lisa finally arrives, and you can hear Stephanie already upset because Stephanie was like, this is one of my biggest pet peeves is being late. So it says she is the goddess of tardiness. So she finally gets on the sprinter. It is 2:30. That means they've been sitting there for 2 hours. Like when I tell you, I would have been like, I don't care what production says. I'm either catching an Uber or I'm gonna tell that man to drive, because I'm not sitting in no sprinter for 2 hours. And you not here. What are you doing, Lisa? So she gets on. She doesn't apologize or nothing. She just sits down. So then Stephanie was like, Lisa, do you think your time is more valuable than ours? Because why are you 2 hours late? So then Lisa ends up saying, like, no, and why are you speaking to me this way? Like, you don't get to speak to me this way. Lisa is good for saying that when it's like, you're the one being disrespectful, and that is why people are speaking to you like that. So Stephanie is just like, well, we've all been waiting for you. And like, what have you been doing? So then like Stephanie's like, were we supposed to praise your grand entrance? Like, you're late. So then Lisa was just like, you don't get to talk to me like that. And if you're speaking for the group, like, these are my friends. They can tell me if they have a problem with it. And I'm like, girl, I mean, I get where Lisa's coming from, but like, I had no problems with Stephanie telling her about herself, because you then have Larsa and Marisol in their confessionals being like, finally somebody told Lisa about herself, because she's been doing this for forever. So they're going back and forth. Now, mind you, Lisa got on my nerves when she got mad at Stephanie for putting her hand out like this. But Lisa was the first one to put her hand out first, when she was like, you don't get to talk to me like that. And Stephanie was like, well, you're being rude. So then Lisa was like, I heard you don't have friends. So I get it. I get why you don't have friends, because you talk to people like this. So then Stephanie was like, no, I don't have friends because they don't know how to be on time like you. Like, they disregard people's time. And so then Lisa's like, stop putting your hand out there like that. Don't put your hand in my face. So then Stephanie's like, I'm not putting my hand in your face, and my hand is short. Like, I'm nowhere near you. If anything, both Stephanie and Lisa were putting their hands in Marisol's face. So they start going back and forth. And then Larsa ends up saying, well, Lisa, you are late. Like, we've all been waiting for you. So then Lisa's like, Larsa, we're not talking to each other right now. So don't talk to me. We're not talking to each other. Don't talk to me. And she does the hand thing again. So then Larsa's just like, Lisa, you were 2 hours late. Like, we've been sitting here for 12 o'clock. It's disrespectful. So they're going back and forth. And so our conversation kind of like dies down, but like Marisol and everyone was like, y'all, we gotta ride, like she here, let's go. So then Stephanie tries to like apologize and be like, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are late, and I'm like, and so then Lisa's like, are you trying to apologize to me? Or are you trying to be condescending? So Stephanie is like, well, girl, I'm trying to explain to you why I was upset with you being late. But if you don't want me to apologize, then I'm not going to apologize, because that's how I'm trying to give you the apology. So then you have Lisa in the confessional being like, who does Stephanie think she is? Like, go somewhere, boss baby. And then you can tell she's upset because she leans back in the chair and she's just like, ugh. And I'm like, well, Lisa, you're disrespectful. Plain and simple. You are disrespectful. And the ladies, you can't put, like, if I had to put a percentage on it, Lisa is pretty much like 70% of the blame, because, girl, being late is disrespectful after a while. And I'm saying this as someone who has been known to be late. Like, I feel like, you know what you did was wrong, Lisa. You should just got on the bus and just said, my bad, y'all. And things probably wouldn't have been that bad. Y'all, that is it. That is all. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below. Share your thoughts and subscribe. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.